It was. It was turned over.
Good evening, everybody. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would all join me in a moment of silence. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Quintana, do we have any issues with regards to our agenda tonight?
Yes, Mrs. Bartels, members of the board, first of all, good evening. Mr. Samaniego is not feeling well this evening, contacted us to let us know that he would not be able to be here. And during as part of his outreach to our office, he also respectfully requested that item 8A be removed from tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda, removing 8A.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And do we have any call to the public tonight? Okay. We are at item 4, consent agenda. Are there any items that board members wish to pull aside? Okay, I'll need a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, we're up to item 5. National School Boards Association Annual Conference. It's our opportunity to reflect on some of our sessions when we were in Boston. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Actually, two that, one particular that stood out for me was the board self-evaluation, which I think we've only had one. We should be having one yearly, and they gave us 3 examples, actually 4 examples of some pretty good self-evaluations, which I will pass on to the rest of the board. One was a checklist, and another was a continuum model. There was one that just has discussion, and then the 4th one was a consensus model. In all of these, though, they pretty much include the fact that we need to be reviewing at least 3 policies per year, or actually not per year, I take that back, per month, per agenda. We need to be looking at 3 policies, which is, part of the board's duties. Also, as far as they've stressed accountability, and gave us said that the success of the district really is a way for us to take a look at how we are governing. And when it comes to the superintendent's evaluation, we need to include that, are we being clear as to what our guidance is and what we expect out of the superintendent. It was very informative, and so again, I will pass these on. The other one I took at the end was the last session, and I couldn't find the material for it, but I do remember the gentleman, he was very good, and he talked about how, testing is, it serves its purpose, but we shouldn't really be judging a student's success or learning on test scores. There's a lot that goes into that, and they really stress the fact that if a parent wants to know how their child is doing, you really need to ask the teacher. The teacher can tell you everything through their own assessments and how they follow the students, and it was just very interesting listening to that perspective of it. So that was the other one, and unfortunately it's been so long I can't remember where all that paperwork is.
Ms. Smith?
One of the ones I liked, it was by a woman, her name was Donna Porter, and it talked about, it says the 3 R's of classroom management: relationships, responsibility, and respect. And I had mentioned to Mr. Quintana that at some point, if we could, have this lady, because she goes around the country speaking, if she could come, maybe even for a opening ceremony, but her focus was really about the environment of a classroom, and after I had been there, then we came and we had our Teacher of the Year dinner, and one of the videos that was up there had a boy that said, "My teacher thinks that I'm good," and that was really the focus that she had, because she was in inner city schools, and she talked about really like your brain and how a lot of times in your classroom management that you go in there and you say, "This is my classroom," but then and if a child walks in and is disrespectful, then all of a sudden, you have that, fight, initially. And it sounds like it's a little bit, from what I've heard here, is maybe it's what the Boys Town will be like, and changing your way of thinking when it comes to discipline and having responsibility, given back to the children, and making the children think that, that they are good, and that they're responsible for the types of behavior that they have. And then, can't remember the other class, but this is something that really made an impression on me when I was in Boston. As we went on the subways, as we went, everywhere through the city, education was a priority in the city. You would have, posters that would, it wasn't just for Harvard, it was, for just whatever their business colleges, but it was everywhere that you went that there was an emphasis on education, and there was an emphasis on excellence, and it was really talking about having a community type of relationship. And and one of the things that I took from it, as I walk into our schools, do we really see goals for excellence? No, we don't. And we have nice schools, and they're clean, and we say that we want it, but as you walk through the schools, do you really see what are we striving for? It's not there. And so I think that really it was developing partnerships with the community, and I really think somehow or another that we should see it in everywhere we go. If we walk into our cafeterias, we should see, we like, clean environments, or, just whatever we can do to make our schools and our community excellent. And I had mentioned to Mr. Quintana when we were there, I said, this is a perfect opportunity because you're on, the board of the city council, or not the city council, the
Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. But anyhow, you're on the city council. This might, be something that you could bring up. but somehow, that our city really should have it everywhere you go. As you're sitting, at a bus stop, where is our emphasis on education? And so that's what I had emphasized to Jill, that I'd like to see that happen in our communities.
Quintana?
I actually lost my notes from Boston, so I had to spend some time over the last couple of days going back and looking at some of the PowerPoints that you can find online regarding the sessions that I attended. So Saturday morning, the keynote speaker was Dan Rather. And for those of you that don't know, Dan was born and raised in rural Texas before moving to Houston. He credits much of his success to public schools and the education he received in the public school system. He's obviously an advocate for public schools. He was our keynote. Saturday morning from 10:30 to 11:45 breakout session. I attended a session entitled Governing Board and School Board Teamwork. And this was an interesting presentation. 3 board members and the CEO of the Cleveland Municipal Schools presented. And they talked about the importance of the CEO and the board members understanding their roles to better work together. And along with spending some time outlining those roles, what I found most interesting in the presentation is that in 1998, new governments there in that area called for a a nominating panel to recommend to the mayor individuals to serve on the governing board, and the mayor appoints governing board members. Just an interesting concept. There's 9 members, 9 governing board members in their school district. 2 non-voting members are presidents of universities or community colleges, and 4 members must have expertise in education or business. And in 2002, voters approved continuing this system. So it was just interesting in how they go about appointing board members, and that is done through the mayor's office. The 1:30 to 2:45 breakout session, I attended a session educating for equity through student realities. Christopher Edmond, an associate professor from the Teachers College at Columbia University, presented. Very passionate young professor. And he talked about, although we talk about multiculturalism and cultural relevance, educators still have the challenge and task of addressing the needs of an increasingly diverse student population. Dr. Edmond, and I mentioned he was very passionate, so oftentimes he kind of got off into some other areas because he was just so involved in what he was talking about. But so it was an interesting presentation. Despite the fact that he digressed at times, his presentation reinforced the need to address that issue within our school district, and we are currently in the process of securing trainers to provide cultural competency training to all of our employees. We're hoping to do that this upcoming school year. Then I attended my last session on Saturday was leveraging customer service to improve your district's brand, and this was presented by board members and the superintendent from the Hearst Bedford School District in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And basically their message was that the national focus on choice has motivated them and inspired them to take the position that everyone is our customer. And obviously we're competing for students and for the families that attend our schools. And so they basically talked about their plan and how they're improving customer service in their school district and how they're measuring that progress. So it was an interesting session. On Sunday, I attended, our keynote speaker that morning was Robin Roberts, and she spoke about her public school experience growing up. Her family moved a lot due to her father's military career, but speaks highly of public schools, just like Dan Rather did. And of course, said that she was well served in the various public schools that she attended throughout the country as they moved around. She also spoke about her battle against a life-threatening illness in recent days. And what I was impressed with as far as Robin Roberts was her very humble and gracious approach, and she appeared to be someone who's very easy to relate to. Then on Sunday afternoon, I attended a session learning in a school that never closes, self-paced personalized learning from anywhere, anytime, with no restrictions. Small three-school district in southern Kentucky. And it's basically the Taylor County Public Schools, and they have 3 schools, 1 elementary, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. And they basically have 4 or 5 major tracks: a traditional, a peer-led, a project-based, a self-paced, and a virtual and Cardinal Academy track. And the Cardinal Academy track, they've identified students that can come and go anytime that they want. The school is open from 7 in the morning to midnight, and those high school age kids come and go as long as they're meeting their academic requirements. They're in this learning environment similar to this room with no adults in that room, but when they encounter an issue or concern, they go down to that math teacher's room or that social studies teacher's room, science teacher's room, and get the help they need, and then go back to this environment. So it's quite interesting. I'm certainly not advocating that we would do something along those lines, but I think the key is that all kids and all students have different needs and learn differently, and that we can do various things to accommodate them. By the way, they have a 100% graduation rate, and they basically state that the governing board does not allow any child to drop out of their schools. So it was quite interesting, and Roger Cook, the superintendent, was quite a colorful, enthusiastic presenter, which made it all that much more entertaining. And then Sunday morning, I attended Actively Engaging Your Business Community. It was presented by an assistant superintendent, the superintendent, and 2 governing board members from Conestoga School District in Pennsylvania. Similar to our school district, they've spent some time and effort building their business and community partners. And what they have recently done is identified 2 or 3 district-wide projects that they want their community partners to support, and that's something that we have proposed, and something that I believe I wrote in one of our goals is to identify some district needs and then ask our business partners that we worked so hard to build last year to support those efforts. And then my last session was Monday morning, the role of the school board in accelerating student achievement through a whole system change. And when looking for that PowerPoint, I couldn't find it, and I believe that Mrs. Smith and I attended that session together, so I was hoping she could summarize that, because I couldn't find my notes and I couldn't find the PowerPoint in the PowerPoint list for the NSBA website. Did we attend that one together? Was that the one?
That was the one that you said was pretty much like the PLCs. Is that the same one?
I believe it was. I just don't remember. Again, I lost my notes and I couldn't find the PowerPoint to get a summary. But anyway, that was my last session before I left for the airport for a 1 o'clock flight.
I attended the same pre-conference session with Ms. Wilson with regards to the board self-assessment. The big takeaway from that was that self-evaluation should naturally lead to improvement. But then I attended the fiscal fitness camp later that day. And that one took looking at our budget in a different direction, where we look at graphs over a multi-year period so that we can actually look and understand where the differences are coming. So, if our capital expenses have climbed, but our classroom dollars have gone down, it gives us that opportunity to look at the whole picture and say, okay, what was going on? And we can have an honest conversation and understand it instead of attacking the system. I also really appreciated there was another session that talked about new board member orientation. And every 2 years, we have 0 to 3 potential new board members. And they had some really good ideas as to how to get them up to speed, how to include them in as much as they can be, between election and their first official meeting. Even doing, to the point possible, kind of a buddy system, so that if they have questions, how do I get things on the agenda? Who do I talk to? What do I do? To kind of help them to navigate as they learn that, the first year or 2, till you get your bearings. So there's a lot of stuff that we have seen before through other conferences, but those 2 were, really those 3 were the biggies for me, I think. All right, we are now at 6A.
Yes, Mrs. Bartels, members of the governing board, it is recommended that the governing board approve the proposed expenditure budget for fiscal year 2016-17 as presented, and Mrs. DePasquale is here this evening to provide information and give an overview in Mr. Barragan's place. Mrs. DePasquale.
Thank you, Mr. Quintana. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Seems like we were just here less than a month ago looking at a budget. So now we are starting a new year and new money. So here's a little comparison of what we ended up this current fiscal year that will end June 30. Of course, Prop 123 passed, so we got a portion of the disbursement from the land trust. For 2016-17 going forward, that distribution will be embedded into our revenue control limit. So if you look at the top line on each table, you'll see the right-hand side for this year is considerably larger, as it does include that state land trust money. We will be moving into current year funding this year, so, but parts of our budget are still based on prior year student count, which will include the override and district additional assistance. The negative adjustment that you see there is the transfer we make to pay for our energy water savings, the performance contract work we had done, and that is expected to come directly off our utility bills, savings there to pay for that financing for that project. And for our capital budget comparison, we are growing in our capital with the help of that state land trust distribution. Our funding source continues to be cut on our capital formula allocation, but once again, we are trying to put as much of the state trust land money into the capital as we can support there. So we will be growing by a little more than $500,000 in our capital budget for next year. For fiscal 17, our district additional assistance was calculated at nearly $5.8 million, and the state reduction, which continues, is just under $5 million, leaving us with only $840,000. So since they started this in the 2008-2009 fiscal year, Glendale has lost approximately $32 million in funding. So the public hopefully will see that even though we're getting about $500,000 from the state land trust, and it's touted by the legislature to be such a boon to additional money in education, it's still not coming anywhere near close to what they're taking away from us. You know, they tend to downplay this side of the reduction. So for the coming year, as I mentioned, they are implementing current year funding. So that will be a challenge for school districts, mainly because of our staffing. We issue employment contracts to our staff, and if we do not get the students and therefore the revenues to support funding those, it's going to create a very challenging and perhaps tense situation. So it'll be very important that we keep our students and try to gain additional students so that we can continue to fund all of the salaries and benefits to which we are obligated. As I mentioned earlier, we do use prior year funding to continue the calculation for overrides, the district additional assistance, the instructional improvement fund, and the classroom site funds. Adjacent ways beginning this year will require school facility board approval for projects over $50,000 and general oversight of any expenditures coming from the Adjacent Ways Fund. Those monies are a levy that we put on to help pay for improvements, like for instance, last year we brought new cable for our internet bandwidth. We switched from CenturyLink to Cox. It pays for new sidewalks, it pays for fire lane repaving and repair, it pays for irrigation system repairs, any city utilities from the public side to our property line. The districts going to current year funding, of course, it'll be imperative that we have accurate student counts. Another thing the state is doing, the Department of Ed is implementing a new student data collection system called AZEDS, and that will be the new system of record. They were very anxious to get it running, and against a lot of school district input to run parallel for a period of time, they chose just to cut the cord, and we go live July 1. So that's going to be a big challenge. Not only will we have to get our students in promptly and make sure that we do frequent reconciliations so that we have accurate student counts, we also have to get all of our teachers entered promptly, because if they're not in the Department of Ed system, we won't get recognition for that teacher and therefore those students. So it's really going to be a big challenge to get this all done in a very immediate time period.
What's that system called again?
It's called AZEDS. It's replacing SACE. So, and as I said, districts have to go online. The Department of Ed is actually taking a very firm stand on this, that if districts are not up and running by August, the state will stop giving state aid payments to those districts. So it's going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. And then finally, for districts that are in declining enrollment, they would be held harmless for this 1 year only, this initial year. And then after that, with the current year funding, it's kind of a pay as you play. So, are there any questions?
Madam President? No mic, but you can hear me. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. So oftentimes we forget that while the board and our staff are knowledgeable about some of our budget items, we often forget, and we don't neglect, it's just we often forget that those who are watching now may not know what we're talking about. Not because they're not knowledgeable, but just because they may not have watched all the meetings. So can you go back and just explain briefly the adjustment made for the performance contract? That happened maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. So they may have heard just said, $458,000, it's part of the performance contract. We're just taking it out of that. Can you just explain what the performance contract is? And then how does that money come out of savings, and specifically that?
Okay. Well, 2 years ago, well, actually 3 years ago, the board authorized a performance contract with Midstate. And over the past 2 years, Midstate has gone through and upgraded the majority of the air conditioning units on our campuses to be more efficient and run more cost effectively, as well as we upgraded a lot of our lighting to be more energy efficient. We installed controls on our air conditioning systems and sensors on our lighting systems, and we can manage most of these things remotely now. So we should realize, and we do realize, energy savings through our electricity bills. So in order to get all of this equipment, we actually we combined our bond funds with some financing to pay for all of this equipment and to pay for the removal of the old equipment and the installation and all the upgrades that were part of that installation. New ductwork were necessary, new controls, things of that nature. And in order to do that, we financed about half of the project cost. So we financed about a total of $5 million for a period of 15 years. We did it in 2 phases, 2 separate years, roughly $2.5 million each year. I think it was 2.3 and 2.7. So over the course of the 15 years, we will make annual payments of $458,000, which are to be offset by the savings we realize on our electricity bill. And although we hope for that dollar savings, it's more a question of our usage, because we can't control APS or SRP rate increases, but we can control the amount of electricity we consume. So while we attached a dollar amount to that, we are actually looking at our usage, and we get monthly reports from Pierce Energy that lets us know how we're doing in our usage.
Mr. Pascual, thank you so much. That's important, because at one time the state used to fund us excess utilities. Now they no longer do. We are responsible for all of our utilities, so this actually reduces those costs and then we actually have obsolete equipment out, and we have newer equipment that's more efficient. Thank you so much for explaining that for those who may not be aware of what we did and why we did it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? I do have one question. I don't know if you'll even have the means to answer this. When I was at the Summer Leadership Institute just a couple weeks ago, board member from another district, one of the concerns that was brought up was the state's student tracking system and how accurate it is. So my question and concern is, how are we going to make sure that we have that safety net financially, and how are we going to ensure that the information we're sending to the state is correct and that, you know, the numbers match?
That is going to be a challenge because while some school districts did test it, they tended to be the smaller school districts whose populations are easier to track and pinpoint. So that is going to be a huge challenge. I mean, everything from the attendance secretary, the school registrar, you know, enrollments are going to have to be done timely. We just have to stay on top of, you know, checking the attendance report, uploading those reports. As I mentioned before, even HR will have a critical piece in this, and getting all of our new teachers to make sure they have, that they're registered in the ADE system so that their kids will count and these teachers will. So it's really going to be a huge challenge. We have 2 district level, what we have called SACE administrators, but they are the people that oversee and they train our school attendance staffs. And they do reconciliations, they check for errors and oversee that, but it's only 2 people, and we have 17 schools. So, you know, they're scared.
I am too.
Actually, I had a thought when you're going through your presentation, when you're on the one slide, you know, where we're talking about, you know, the implementation of the current year funding, and then you were talking about make sure we have our teachers, et cetera. But my thought was, well, this isn't going to be an issue for us because we're short teachers. But I'm thinking, you know, if you have a district that, say like we were declining in enrollment and we had extra teachers, and you know, I was wondering, you know, because of contracts, if we could just be creative and we find, you know, that that, you know, say like we could just maybe send a teacher, say, you know, you have the opportunity to you know, go somewhere else to help with the budgeting. And I was like, I don't know if that would work.
Actually, that, you know, that's a great idea, and I'm sure school districts will be speaking to one another about those issues. You know, we feel we have a little bit of a cushion because we've been building up our employee benefits trust fund to make that a little more solvent. You know, we're trying to build back up our Medicaid fund that had been depleted. Our indirect cost fund is still depleting, but we are trying to use our resources and to build a little cushion so that we don't end up in an overexpenditure situation because we don't have the students base to support the staffing that we do have. And of course, whether our schools are half full or over full, you're going to have roughly the same utility bills. You're still going to have to cut the grass. You're still going to have to maintain everything. So it's just going to make it much more important to guard the resources that we have and to continue to improve our student achievement so we can attract more students and continue to grow in our district.
One of the responsibilities, as a board member is the budget, is being on track of the fiscal part of the district. And I know in this past year in our board reports, we really weren't given the enrollment data as we used to. And I think that, you know, if we approve this at this time, I really think that it's important that it comes back to us as board members with a little bit more information so that we're up to date with this current year funding. And so if there's something going on that we can be a little more responsible than we were in the past.
Okay.
More questions or comments? Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second on the proposed expenditure budget for fiscal year 2016-17. Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Wilson? And Chair votes aye.
I thought you said Joe votes aye.
Chair. All right, we are now at 6B, job description.
Mrs. Bartels, members of the governing board, as part of our Ed Services restructuring this evening, we're respectfully asking the governing board to approve the new job description for a coordinator for special education as presented.
I just had a question on that. We used to have, what were the two positions that were in there before? We used to have a director, and then what was our other position? Was it two directors because of?
The staffing that was there was the director of special services. There's a coordinator of preschool in there, and then there were 2 achievement advisors.
And so this job description is combining, or
No,
just?
I'm just asking approval of a job description due to the vacancies. I haven't determined restructuring yet.
So this aligns with all of that that's coming our way.
Well, I'll move to approve the job description for coordinator for special education.
First, I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay, we are to item 7.
Yes, Mrs. Bartels, members of the governing board, last governing board meeting, I presented a draft of some annual district strategic goals coming from the superintendent, and the governing board asked for some time to review that draft before providing feedback before we finalize these. As I indicated when we shared that information, that the Arizona Merit scores are embargoed and will be for, I think, another day or two. And that's why we left some blanks in some of those measurement areas, and we will fill those if the governing board feels like these goals are in the areas that are needed and the direction that we would like to see take place. As I indicated in an email that I sent out, or Liz sent out on my behalf yesterday, when discussing and getting guidance from our legal counsel regarding the foundation, legal counsel did advise that we should remove one of the goals in the draft that I had included that related to having a fundraising event as part of the foundation by a certain date. She did caution us that the foundation and district business are 2 separate areas, and we should keep them as such. So at this time, I'm respectfully requesting the governing board indicate whether or not we should proceed with goals similar to those that were presented to you for your review.
I think as I had looked at the goals, right now we have 4 different goals in here, and I think in the discussions prior that I remember Ms. Wilson saying maybe we should just have 1 or 2, and I kind of agreed with that. And I think having 4 goals, I think it's okay for you to have 4 goals, but I think for us to focus on academics and retaining, and I don't remember what
Retaining.
yeah, and retaining. So that would be one of my suggestions. And then as I looked at goal 1, which was increase academic growth and success, There was a couple things that I felt were missing in this area, and one of them was PLC. Since we're putting all that money into that program, and this is something that we want, you can figure out how you want to word it and be able to make it a SMART goal, but I think somehow we need to be able to have indicators, you know, of this is what we would like by our first quarter, you know, in our instructions, you know, with our PLCs, et cetera, and going that way with it. If this is our focus, and I think it should be in our goals. And then another thing I thought was missing in the academic thing is one of our board reports recently, I saw a percentage of how many people passed advanced math, and I think that there's a problem somewhere, and so I think there needs to be a goal of, I don't know if it's population, I don't know if it's you know, whatever this goal is, but if we're going to have advanced math, something happened last year and that was not a good thing. In some schools, other schools, it was amazing, but, and then I think I had something else when I looked. I think that's all that I had written down on this.
I certainly have no issue if the rest of the board is in agreement to narrow our goals to those two primary areas, understanding that we will continue to work in the other areas, but be very, very clear that those are our two primary areas of focus.
Actually, I did have one other thing. When I read Goal 2, it really seemed like it was focusing on just hiring, and I didn't think that our goals came up with anything to retain our teachers in here. And you know, the only thing I saw in here is that the teacher retention rate will increase by blank, you know, but it didn't seem.
I believe you're right. There are some retention-related measurements in there and actions, but it is heavy on the other side, so we can look at that.
I feel we have to be creative in how we're keeping our teachers.
In fact, I believe Mr. De La Huerta sent us an email in recent days with some thoughts and suggestions that he had been thinking about.
I know with the passage of 1, 2, 3, you know, we're increasing the amount, we're focusing really on, you know, as new teachers come in and raising that level. However, you know, the teachers that have been here for a while, they also need to have, you know, substantial raises at the same time. I mean, that's not all of the, you know,
Right.
reasons, but, you know, we just don't, you know, want to forget that those teachers that have been here a while, we need to work on keeping them as well.
And the percent numbers you're thinking will be updated once the
Yes, in the
information is
next
released?
few days, as soon as the embargo is lifted, because we want to tailor those specifically to our results.
Madam President, so under goal number 4, increase parent and community engagement in meaningful ways. So there's really not a lot of beef in under the measurements with that. What should be in there is our top priority, which is student achievement and academic growth. But what we need to remember is that we are teaching families or the children of these families, and they should know where the district stands, the level of academics for the district that their children attend. So in community engagement, we need to start teaching our parents how to understand not anymore AIMS, but AZ Merit, and how to measure growth. A lot of parents don't know that. It's very difficult. And while a lot of parents are involved and engaged, there's also parents who work full-time and in excess of 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Children are at the babysitter, and by the time the parents come home to have to feed their children, there is no time to talk about academics. So I want us to focus on academic growth, but also share that with the parents in a meaningful way, but in a way that they can understand it. When we've accomplished our job 110% is when this room is filled with parents that can sit at that dais and say, my child's achieving in your district because, or my child is not because, and they understand the academic growth. So once we've done that, which is going to be very difficult, I don't know that if we can ever reach that goal, but incrementally we need to start teaching, and I use the word teach because we all have to learn how to understand the way the state measures us. So I would like to see more of that. Parents need to really know how to gauge whether their children are learning or not.
Okay, thank you. We will make some adjustments based on your feedback. Thank you.
I think one other thing, as I'm looking on here, you're going to write down a percentage as measured by AZ merit for grades 3 and 8, and I think that is important, but I also think that that's not it shouldn't be our only indicator. I don't know how we can change that. I mean, it's really important, obviously, for the labeling, but we keep saying we want to show growth, and I want to, to show, Miss Wilson says that it's just by talking to teachers, but I think that there's other ways to. Because I don't know how, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how you're going to show growth. If you look at AZ merit and you have like one of my children that's already, like beyond the mark, how are you going to show any growth in AZ merit with her? It's not going to happen. I don't know how you're going to find that. If you have a highly proficient student, I don't know how that is going to be there. But I know that we don't have all highly efficient, and I'm just wondering, are we not going to meet our goals because you're not going to see growth in AZ merit?
Mrs. Sagata-Jones, your thoughts on that? Growth or measure growth is, I think, the better way to phrase that.
Well, because the data is still embargoed, but we have been looking at that through data at the research department. We've been looking at the progress made toward a student's scale score. So we've determined what we can measure as a growth based off the student's scale score to see how many points they would need to get from one proficiency level to the other that would show growth, as well as looking at that piece when we can determine. Also, we've been looking at can we determine, are the kids on the right pace? Are they making enough gains in skill scores? So right now that's kind of what we're looking at. AZ merit obviously is not what we're familiar with in the past when we looked at AMOs and those things, but we have in research been looking at ways to determine some student growth as far as how they compared on one proficiency level to the other based on skill scores. In addition, as far as we never just use AZ merit, that's the summative at the end, to determine progress of students. That should be happening daily in the classrooms through common formative assessments. And then how we measure that at the district is based off benchmarks. So you can look at benchmarks to determine how kids are progressing as well. So those are some ways that we are currently looking at that. We used AZ merit last year, looking to see how we are faring to this year. Once we can discuss those things after Monday, then you'll be able to see some of the reports we have generated, and that will give you some indication of the progress towards the goal that's necessary. Unfortunately, I know that we've said that AZ merit is not the only indicator, but as you stated, is what we're measured by the state of Arizona. It also affects federal funding, so we have to pay attention to it. So we're trying to align everything that we have to that. As we had mentioned before, we met with Key Data Systems, and we are about a 7.8 alignment from benchmarks, and that's good. So we'll just have to see. We're still analyzing the data to see all the way down to the standards to determine which standards kids struggled with. We can tell with every standard where kids fell on a scale score and how many points they need to get to the next level. So we're digging deeper into the data as we speak. But the key is, I'm going to go back to what Mr. Aldama said, is critical. We need to teach parents not only how to read data, but how to support data. So we did, as you approved a couple months ago, family literacy or a family liaison 21st century position that will conduct workshops to do that and to meet with communities, because as he stated, it's a 12-hour day for each other. But if we can do some after hours if possible, or before hours, or during hours, or weekends, Saturdays, whatever we can do to provide that information for parents, I think that's critical, because we know that we need to get parents an understanding in order to support their kids. They may be with a babysitter, but that doesn't mean we can't give the babysitter or the student strategies to work on as well. So there's ways we're currently looking at with our new positions to help families and parents who, it's tough out there, you know, with the time and the demands we all have, but we want to make sure they do have the tools necessary to support their children.
So, you know, so to me, what I would add in there is, okay, if I'm going to look at my data and I'm going to say, okay, my refugee kids were the lowest in the district, then I would want that in here, and this is what we're going to do to focus on improving that population. You know, find the population, or if it's a certain, you know, thing in reading, whatever, it used to always be comprehension, you know, if that's our lowest thing, then I would like that to be part of in our goals, that we're going to measure that we're focusing on that, and that we've grown in that area, and it should come back into our AZ merits.
I want to speak a little bit to what Ms. Smith just said, because it really begs the question after Ms. Smith mentioned all that. So here I'll read under measurements under goal 1. It reads, by June 30th, 2017, the number of students who approach, meet, or exceed grade level proficiency in language arts will increase by X% as measured by AZ merit for grades 3 to 8. So it begs the question, you spoke about some other instruments, how we verify whether or not we've met those goals. So should it read by AZ merit and other instruments? Otherwise, we're only going to measure by AZ merit, period, nothing else. And you've heard me harp on the district having some schools that were D status, and I was told that, well, you can't use that anymore, but that's what the state told us we had to follow, and that's what I followed, and that's when I told the community you have D schools by way of the Ames test. And so here we're following that again, AZ merit, period. So are we going to use just AZ merit, or are we going to put there and other instruments that track data? So that would beg that question, do we leave that or do we change it? So my point is, you're absolutely right. Is it just Arizona merit, or is it other instruments as well? So I would caution that we just leave it at that. Because when our superintendent brings back that growth and says, per Arizona merit, that's it, we're done. Well, okay, you met Arizona merit, but what about those other instruments? They're very defined and very significant. So I would just caution the board to not add that period there, and perhaps change that to some different verbiage, but you're absolutely right.
I kind of like leaving it there, because for me, the AZ merit is the summative. It's the end result after all of, I mean, we've kept updated throughout the year, and then AZ merit is the final. So I think to have a SMART goal that approaches that, or that includes that, I think I like to have that.
Well, and I understand that. My point is that when the superintendent brings back the growth, and that's to say it's positive growth, but it's all based on Arizona merit, and then our superintendent wants to add more, but it's nothing to do with that, you can't use that because we've put it in a goal that it's only Arizona merit. So to the superintendent and staff's benefit, it would benefit them putting in other instruments. Otherwise, we're only going to use AZ merit, period.
Yeah, but if they're implementing changes, positive changes, like to the point of the advanced math courses. Well, if more kids are guided into that earlier, we would gradually, in theory, we should see increases in our math outcomes, which would be reflected in that outcome.
If they, if you guys want to say whatever, you're 10% just by AZ merit, that's fine, but, it doesn't.
Well, Mrs. Smith, members of the board, obviously, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the direction that we're getting from the board is that goals 3 and 4, although they're of value and that should be something that we continue to work on, that the governing board is wanting to look at 2 goals, that being student achievement and teacher retention. So of course, if we're doing that, then that may allow for us to expand a little bit more on this one intentionally cover some of those areas that you've asked us to. Okay? Okay.
Madam President, you have to understand also that in educational services as well as even at the school sites and classroom, AZ merit is not the only piece that's being looked at. There are other requirements as well. We have to look at DIBELS, we look at benchmarks. So those are other assessments that we have in place that we have to look at as well as AIMS science and those as well. We also do look at the advanced algebra and geometry classes as well. So the work of Ed Services is really now looking at AZ merit and determining how aligned we are in each of those, and then determining to set goals for a district. If the direction is not to set a goal to meet AZ merit, then that's going to have to be a conversation before we start doing our work, because we have to set goals in order to state assessment as the district. Schools set their goals to meet AZ merit, but they also are setting goals to meet each benchmark as well, and the benchmark is going to get you to the AZ merit. So there's multiple measures that you're using. We would never just use one data point. The state uses one data point, right, but we wouldn't do that to make instructional decisions or services for children. It's just what we're held accountable at the district level. So when the district presents to you goals, it's based off typically what the state is. That doesn't mean that you can't set goals for how many, what areas of focus and DIBELS do you want to see growth in, and to what. We can set our own so-called benchmarks that we want to make. You want to get to, ideally, I can tell you, if you sit in here and if you place in here, you say that 10% language arts will increase by 10%. Well, we'll never get there. You're never going to get there by 10%. That's probably going to have to be 110% to get there. So it's really thinking about if it's, let's say we want all of our students, regardless of their diversity, we want all students to meet highly proficient at 80%. 80% of all students will be highly proficient. Then we need to determine how many years it's going to take us to get there. But also, I think there needs to be a goal that says, within this amount of time, we want 80% of our students to be there. Because the problem is there hasn't been that, and we're not there. And so you're going to have to set a goal in which you can set a trajectory of how fast you're going to get there and put the resources in place. Obviously, you would do that by your diverse populations. Another data piece that's you would be wanting to look at to see if there's progress being made is your ZELA, language acquisition proficiency assessment that you're using. You would want to look at those things too. Schools also use other assessments. You can look at DRAs, you can look at SRIs for Lexile, all those different measurements that we do, but typically what's been reported at this level has been AZ merit. As you saw last year, we began to give you a benchmark because it was put into place. You also saw DIBELS that was put into place. Now that we have all those to compare to from last year, we'll start to set what we believe the district goals should be. And then from the district goals, schools will set goals as a school goal. Maybe at one school, let's use the advanced math. One school needs to show a 100% increase. Another school needs to show a 2% increase. Once you get to the school goal, then it goes down to the classroom goals. So the classroom teachers at grade level set goals. Okay, for third grade, we need to show this much growth in order to meet the benchmark, in order to meet AZ merit. So that's how that whole goal setting really turns out to play in the long run.
And so to all that, thank you. I guess I may have explained it wrong, or maybe I was taken wrong, but Ms. Smith, we may be on the same page here, but AZ Merit is a good tool for your toolbox. That's good. I'm trying to give you more tools to bring back and say, hey, we do have growth by means of Arizona Merit and also these other instruments. That's all what I'm trying to say is I want to give you more resources to justify that we are growing. That's what I want. All of our teachers, principals, and even our superintendent assistant. But I want you have a toolbox, but I just think there's some tools missing. I want to give you those, and that's really kind of simplified it. I just want to give you more tools to prove that our kids are learning. But if, as Ms. Smith just said, if you want to do AZ Merit, okay, we're going to hold you accountable to AZ Merit. But I just think you need to have some more more tools in the toolbox, just to be simplified. If Ms. Smith agrees, I think that's what we're talking about. I just want to give you more tools. But if you want to do that, hey, let's do it.
Well, I don't look at it as tools, but I do look at it as outcomes. Because I agree, we were shown the Dibbles data, and once we understood it, it was like, it made a lot of sense to us. And we could see where, we got some challenges, and we could see growth. The same with our benchmarks. Like you said, we've got a base level now. And after that presentation, we noticed several areas that were a little concerning to us. So if we could maybe have multiple just data points to be able to look at and say, okay, because I understand AZ Merit, while everybody looks at that and, it's do or die by that outcome, I also get it that it's a snapshot of a moment in time. So if we have some, better indicators to say, okay, we're seeing the growth of these kids all year long. We know we're doing positive things, even if this one piece doesn't necessarily reflect to that full picture.
No, I think that's what the mention of the other assessments were, because AZ Merit is there because it has to be there. But really, we're using assessment, obviously to show growth, but also the purpose of assessment is to change instructional practices, adjust and goes, every time we teach, we assess, we make adjustments, all so that kids are getting, all the standards that they need. But really, assessment is ongoing. We just happen to have to report to the state about it, but typically in your classroom, teachers are assessing informally daily. They do checks for understanding to make sure they readjust their teaching on the spot. That's where you see, the growth as well. So, but, at the end of the day, the bottom line is, we have to respond to what the state is requiring, and we have to answer that to the community, because Monday morning it's hitting the paper.
Right.
And we can say, yeah, that's where it is, but we're doing X, Y, and Z, but in the general public, this is where you are in the state of Arizona. So I understand that, and I support that, and I'm not the fan of AZ Merit by no means, but I also know what is out there in the public and what we're required to report. So I have to be able to be out there in public as you do to say, well, we looked at GSD AZ Merit and you're at this level, what are you doing? Well, here's what we're doing to do that. I think if we're showing, what we're doing to increase the student achievement, then we're doing what we need to be doing. But we still have to answer to when a parent comes in and says, I don't want my kid to go to this school because of the poor achievement perhaps. We've seen that when that's what the state imposed upon us when they did A through D label, A through F labels, is that they gave parents the option that they did not have to attend those schools that were marked as the Ds, that they had a choice. So we still have to answer to that. I'm very encouraged by the outstanding leadership and teachers that we have, that we are making progress and we're going to make progress, and we'll do whatever we need to for the state, but bottom line, we're going to give teachers the resources that they need to teach and the support they need to teach, and then through those you'll start to see the change in student achievement, and we know that some of those things have been missing.
Madam President, just, since I got my voice back, I don't know how to be quiet. I lost my voice for 3 weeks, so I promise I'm done. I've probably been the most critical of the district, and I probably don't have a lot of fans, and that's not what I'm here for, but I've been very critical about the district and the fact that some of our schools are failing, and I've used that word fail, and I've used it very, very boldly out there, and I don't feel that some of our kids have been learning. However, and I'm not one to celebrate mediocrity. And when the embargo has not been lifted, and when it does, we'll see where we're at. I'm not really concerned about how many steps we took, as much as the direction those steps are going. That's what I want to see. And again, I'm going to go back to Ms. Smith and I. We just want to give you more tools, more resources to show us that. But again, when that's lifted and we know, right now, yes, if it's a lot of steps, then yeah, I'm going to be like, great, but I don't want to see us going backwards. So it's not, 10 steps. I'm more celebrating the direction that those steps are going in. And so, again, I'm going to be quiet. I just want you to know that I support you, but I just want you to have more tools. And I won't celebrate mediocrity, but I will celebrate the direction we're going. If it shows that we're going in the right direction, then I'm on board.
Absolutely, and if it's an upward trend that we're hoping for, then everything has to be celebrated because people are working very, very hard. So any movement upward is good. You have to also remember when you start new initiatives, there's an implementation dip and it could drop a little bit, but typically you'll see a bump the first year. I told you that, but you start to get that momentum, and as we shared with you, we've put the resources in place to give teachers the tools, and we do appreciate that you're not just looking at AZ Merit, that we're looking at all those other data points, because that's what it's about for kids, and we're not real fond of every component of AZ Merit, obviously even how it's administered. I'm the first to say that, but at the same time, I would never not give you the information that you need to respond to your community about why we have to have AZ Merit. That's all.
Good discussion, thank you.
All right, so we are up to 8D. Mr. Aldama, this was an item that you had asked for.
Thank you. Yes, I asked for this item to come on board because at the time when I asked for it, there's a new association forming, and it's the Arizona Latino School Board Association. I asked Joe if he would bring some information. Mr. Quintana, you've attached some information. Are you comfortable speaking to some of that on the Arizona Latino School Board Association?
Yes, Mr. Aldama, members of the board, when that initial request came to me about the potential membership of some or all of our board members, and we researched that situation. At that time, there was no means to become members, and the association was still in its infancy in many respects. So that was pretty much where we were at that point in time. And I believe that as of today, they have made some progress in the membership and registration process. And that's basically where we're at this time. But I do not have any additional information regarding the association.
Yeah,
you may have more than I do.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really what it is, it's similar to the Arizona School Board Association. But however, they advocate for Latino students in Arizona to guarantee their unique educational needs are being met. And correct me if I'm wrong, are we 80 or 85% Hispanic children in the Glendale school district? Mr. Quintana?
Yes, we're closer to the 85.
So, and it's important to know that the Latino School Board Association isn't only for membership of Latino school board members, it's for a diverse group of individuals that want to join. We can join as a school district, we can join as individuals, but it's a new association that advocates for communities who are predominant minority or Hispanic communities. Glendale Elementary is one of them. And I wanted it to come back to the agenda for some discussion that we should diversify where we get our information and resources for our children and for our staff, and having the Arizona School Board Association, the Latino School Board Association, that would really exemplify the diversity that we're looking for when we go out and look for resources, guidance, and policy changes for the school district. So I would encourage us to look into it. I would most likely be, I will be a member, I will join that, but Mr. Quintana is correct. I don't know if their status is clear yet, so I would ask you to look in that. If it is, I would encourage this board to consider being a member, and important so you know that the two associations have collaborated and are working with each other, and I think that's important. They're not at each other's throat. It's a really good relationship, and I really think it's important for us to be part of.
So I know you said that they're working in collaboration with the Arizona School Board Association, but I'm looking at the information that we got here, and offering professional development workshops on school board leadership and effective governance, policy research and recommendations on equity in school districts, scholarship opportunities, networking opportunities. How is this different than the Arizona School Board Association?
And simply as I said, it's an opportunity for us to diversify where we're getting our information, but more so, as you read on there, it's the school district learning the culture of a community whose children are 85% Hispanic children. That's the difference. And the Arizona School Board Association may not be targeting that culture. And so it's important that we be part of an organization that does, and I think that's the difference. But again, I'm going to bring you back to the fact that they're collaborating with each other. One may not have the information the other has.
I'm going to put a thought out there. Mr. Adami, you stated that you're planning on joining, correct?
Yeah.
So when you do, would you bring back information to us to let us know? Because at this point so far, I mean, I've gone to the equity events that ASBA has hosted numerous times now. I think I've only missed one since they started doing this a couple years ago. And I think they are doing exactly what you were saying, that they are trying to make sure that as a school board, we understand that we can't just say, okay, one size fits all. And if as a district we're doing what we should be, which is looking at the individual needs of every student as much as we can, then we should be helping every student no matter their background.
That is correct. But I will correct you and say that the Arizona School Board Association has not always done that. It's taken leaders in boards and other associations to get them to start to understand that and make those changes. They have not done that 100%, nor have they done that probably 50%. That's my guesses. That's why this organization was formed. There's no racial divide here, and it kind of may sound like what I'm hearing, maybe not, but it's really another association, another tool for our toolbox. But I don't believe that the Arizona School Board Association has done that yet. They haven't specialized in that. And if I'm mistaken, please show me where they have. And they do advocate for kids. They don't say that we're only advocating for Caucasian children, but they don't specify that they are helping the minority Latino kids. So we are in a heavy populated, 85% Hispanic community. I think it would make sense for us to be part of that and to look into it.
So is this the correct membership fees on here?
They're not,
I think if a board member wants to be
Yeah.
part of them, let them be a part of it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I don't know if this is,
Mrs. Wilson, members of the board, we believe this is the current membership information, yes.
So Joe, what I'd like to ask is that you maybe meet with the association, find out if their status is cleared, and if it is cleared, then as Ms. Smith just suggested, if a board member would like to join on his or her own, they may do so, but again, we belong to the Arizona School Board Association as a whole. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to join it as a whole. So I would ask for you to take a look at that, because the last time we checked, the status wasn't complete yet.
Yes, at that time. And we,
And if I may, I would even suggest, I would even go as far as saying, Mr. Quintana, you should reach out to the association and ask them to bring a presentation to this board so that the board has more of an understanding. The board is asking me questions as if I'm a board member of that association. I'm not. I'm only advocating for them and advocating that we become part of that. So that all of that is cleared and we get all of our questions answered, why don't we ask members of that board or the president or whomever to come out and give this district and this board a presentation on how they can be resourceful for us, and that question can be asked to them. We've already a member of this other association. How do you differ? So it's inappropriate for me to sit here and advocate for them to that extent. So I would like to suggest that as well. If we're going to leap into something that costs, why don't we get some information?
yeah, I would like that, because I'm just a little confused as to, I'm just having a hard time that if we did belong to this association as a governing board, I mean, how do we? No, it's it looks to me like they would be offering pretty much the same type of professional development that the Arizona School Board gives to us, and I just seen a redundancy, maybe that type of. So I would like somebody to give a presentation. So maybe if there is a huge difference, I would like to see that.
Yeah, and like I said, it's inappropriate for me to sit here and try to explain to you what the association does differently. I only what I know because I've been involved in it. But so we would have to ask questions such as, what are you doing in Arizona? And we should bring the both, not at the same time, obviously, but what are you doing specifically to target Hispanic children and their student achievement? What are you doing specifically? And then we ask the Latino School Board Association what they're doing. But, I've learned quickly that we don't just jump into something, and I'm very confident this association will have resources that the other doesn't, that I would suggest we bring them out here, yes, and give us all a presentation. I think it'd be very, very beneficial.
Right, and Mrs. Bartels, members of the board, Mr. Aldama, I believe that because of the infancy of the group, that's why there are questions and we're not totally clear on what may be the same or what may be different, and gathering additional information, I think, would be wise. Okay.
And we are now at item 9, future meetings.
Mrs. Bartels, members of the governing board, I believe it was last meeting that I mentioned to the governing board that this week, end of last week and this week, we would be interviewing for some vacant assistant principal positions. We completed that process today, and our principals who have those vacancies are in the process of completing reference checks, and we may be ready by early next week to bring to this governing board some recommendations, not only on those 2 vacancies, but a couple of other current vacancies. Some other departments are also interviewing at this time. Because of the time of year, and that being late June, we always worry that some of the individuals that we're interested in may be also applying and interested, or other school districts may be interested in them. I would not like, I don't want to wait unless the governing board chooses to wait until our first July meeting to make those recommendations. I'm respectfully requesting that the governing board hold a telephonic meeting sometime early next week so that we can bring these recommendations to you. If you certainly prefer to meet in person, I certainly understand that as well. I'm just trying to be sensitive to the time issues and the needs of the board, and I'm only suggesting telephonic for convenience purposes. But that's what I'm requesting at this time, and I believe our first July meeting is fairly routine.
Well, that one will also have our budget adoption on it.
Yes, you're right, and the budget adoption, but the rest is fairly routine.
Well, if you're going to do a telephonic meeting, then you have to do it after 4:30 to get me.
Time is certainly, we're flexible with time. It's just a matter of whether or not the board is available and could do that so that we could get these people on board if the board chooses to accept our recommendation, and so that we do not lose these individuals to other school districts that may be also looking for similar individuals to fill positions.
Okay, is there any day between the 27th and the 30th that does not work for anybody?
I just needed it late or way early in the morning.
The 29th doesn't work, but Monday works, the 30th works after 4 p.m. as Ms. Smith suggested. So Monday and Thursday work for me.
Good.
Monday?
Yeah, Monday's fine.
And
Will you have them ready by then?
no, Cindy, I'm sorry. I know that our AP recommendations may be ready by Monday, but Mrs. Sagata-Jones, you're working on some interviews, correct? When are those? Tuesday afternoon, they'll be complete.
So would the 30th work for everybody?
Yeah, as long as it's at 4.
Until
We can't
4:30.
make 4.
Can you do it by phone?
4:15? Can you do 4:15?
I will work on rides and I'll see if I can.
It's telephonic, right?
Yes, if that's what the board desires, yes.
I always have dinner with my dad. Usually I'm on my way to see him. I leave around 4:15, 4:30.
Right.
I would be driving.
And it's irrelevant, but I did not plan to work that day. I have not taken any time off, but I am in town and would be available at whatever time the board can be available for a board meeting. So we could certainly do Thursday if we can work out
Can we do it really early?
Like how early?
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
You can be on the phone in your pajamas.
We can do a morning if that is the board's preference. We certainly can.
Positions, correct?
Yes.
I'd actually prefer the morning.
Fine. 8 o'clock?
So the 30th?
30th, 8 a.m.?
Yeah.
Okay. Cindy, Liz reminded me that to do the 8 a.m. Thursday, it's doable, but we have to have the agenda posted by 8 a.m. Wednesday. Would we be prepared to do that? I believe that we can with placeholders, correct?
Oh, it's Friday.
Oh, there has to be the names?
Because, yeah, that's not,
Was is Friday out? Or has to be the
nobody's
30th?
working on Friday. You'll be the only one on the phone.
Yeah.
Monday is the 27th, and we would be looking to have by Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. We could do it? Okay, we can do it.
8 a.m., 30th,
Wednesday morning, the 30th. At
Thursday.
8
We'll
Thursday morning, 8 a.m., but we'll post the agenda Wednesday morning, 8 a.m., by 8 a.m., or prior to. Okay? Thank you for accommodating us with that.
All right. Is there anything else with regards to future meetings and events? Guess not? No? All right, at this time, we'll move to item 9B, agenda item requests. Mr. Aldama, do you have any requests?
None at this time.
Ms. Smith?
None.
Ms. Wilson? Nope. And I have none. So,
Excuse me, Mrs. Bartels, may I just ask, can we confirm that the July 14th meeting will take place at 5:30 PM? Because we will have to publish our notice in the newspaper?
yeah,
Thank you.
okay. So now we're at item 10A, superintendent report.
Yes, I don't have a lot to report other than there just does not seem to be any slower downtime anymore. All of our principals, assistant principals, other employees, district office staff are working extremely hard, not only to fill positions, but to get a lot of the work that needs to be done. It's hard to believe that we're looking at 4 weeks before our new principals arrive at the end of July. And so summers just seem to be shorter and shorter, and we're trying to get everybody to get a little bit of time off, because obviously when people are tired, you're not as productive as you can be and should be. So despite trying to get the work that needs to be done, we're also trying to encourage our various employees to take time off to re-energize and recharge for the work ahead of us.
Okay, and now we're at 10B, governing board reports. Mr. Aldama?
I have no reports. I just want members of the audience, those that are here and those who may be at home that have an agenda in front of them, you'll notice that 2 items that I requested previously, agenda items, non-discrimination ordinance and the unity pledge were pulled. I just want everybody to know that that wasn't pulled by members of this board. They were pulled by me, by my asking, simply because I've asked Mr. Quintana to go back and bring some information for a healthy dialogue. I don't feel it's appropriate for us to put something on that we have no information. So I just want everybody to know that it's not controversial. It's sensitive, but no member of this board yanked it. I did, because I want to have an absolute great dialogue. But the superintendent needs to bring some information. He's going to do some homework and then bring these items back. So that was my doing, and I don't want anybody to feel like the board yanked it and that's why it's off. So, okay.
Mr.
You also have
Aldama?
an invitation for a
Yes, that's what,
city-related event.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
I was
thank you so much.
that's what I was going to remind him of.
Thank you. This evening at 8 o'clock, after I get out of here, I will be attending. I've asked Mr. Quintana to invite the board and anybody else that wants to join us. The city council and I, all of us together, unanimously voted to rename the Glendale Amphitheater at City Hall after Elo Rogers. Elo Rogers was a band director for the Glendale Elementary School District. He was the music teacher. His mother was his wife was a teacher for Glendale Elementary, and she was my teacher. So we elected to name that facility after him. He is the founder of the summer band, and this is the 50th anniversary. So he started that 50 years ago. He's one of our own, and I asked Joe if he would like to attend. Anybody else would like to attend? But it's going to be a great celebration tonight. 8 o'clock, Murphy Park at City Hall, from 8 to 9 o'clock, and we're going to be celebrating Elo Rogers and his family and all his contributions to the city of Glendale, our children. Okay?
And
Thank you for the reminder.
And it should be nice and cool by 8 o'clock.
Cooler.
Down to
In
90.
your imagination. Ms. Smith?
The only thing I wanted to bring up is I saw a post from the summer leadership thing with a picture of Miss Bartels in it, and she received another cactus pin. I don't know which color you received. Okay. But she was recognized on behalf of advocacy at that event.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Yeah, if I could just backtrack a little bit, in May, the day that 123 passed, I was at a rally at the state capitol, which was titled "Now It Starts." And so just to let everybody know that a lot of us are not giving up on getting the state to give more money to public schools. A good way with the elections coming up, you might want to check and see who your legislator is. and maybe see how they voted on educational issues throughout the last few years. When I was in Boston, one of the presenters had said that as well as giving letter grades to schools like they had in the past, that it might be wise to give letter grades to legislators when it comes to education, and have that posted in the newspaper. What are we giving them?
That's
so
controversial.
yeah, so check and see, and if you need to, call or email them and tell them how strongly you feel that your public schools need more money. And so that was it. Stay cool.
To build on what Ms. Wilson said, we cannot afford to let the state think that Prop 123 passed and that's all they have to do. One way to do that is, again, to keep vigilant on them and keep letting them know how important education is to the growth of Arizona in general, but also right now to go to the Classrooms First initiative that Governor Ducey has started, and there's a link on there that you can provide feedback and your concerns so that they, if nothing else, it's included that says people are watching and people expect something different to come our way. But I'd also like to reflect a little bit events that occurred in Florida the last week. While it seems like so much energy is spent making sure that individual groups are identified, it seems like we are getting further and further away from the fact that we're all human beings, and as such, we need to respect each other that way. So on that note, I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.